So the NCAA is reaching a settlement finally. And it looks like the Power 4 schools have their own set of rules. We'll talk about that next on the ProZone. Welcome to the ProZone. I'm Matt Roberts. So the NCAA has kind of reached a settlement. It looks like they've got most of the terms ironed out. There was a big issue with roster limits, which is still kind of being negotiated out, and we'll see if we can dig into that a little bit here. But let's stay on the topic of what the settlement is going to be, and then how it doesn't affect the Power 4 schools, or the Power 4 conferences, ACC, SEC, Big 10, Big 12. The settlement was supposed to be figured out by April 1st, then May, then June 1st. Now they're looking at July 1st. Well, they got to come up with an answer pretty quickly because, let's be honest, this football season is starting soon, and they have to have something in order to keep track of everything and make sure that the athletes are following the same set of rules. Right now, it's kind of free-for-all. It really is. It's an NCAA free-for-all, and it's probably going to continue to be that way, with some very basic patchwork legislation or rules that are coming down. When you finish hearing this, you're going to probably be as confused as I am with this thing. It's just a hot mess. It really is. So let me talk about it. So what's going on in the current settlement? In the current settlement, you have basic terms, revenue sharing, one of the tenets of it. Institutions, particularly the Power 5s, big conferences, they can share a portion of, or Power 4, they can share a portion of their athletic revenue, okay, media, ticket sales, sponsorship with athletes, and to the tune of about $20.5 million, and that will increase annually. Okay, that's where we stand right now. Now that $20.5 million will also be augmented by name, image, and likeness money, no collectives, booster money, sponsorship money. That's where it's a very gray area. Okay, they're trying to relegate what is approved no collective money versus approved booster money versus approved sponsorship, third-party sponsorship money. Like if a company says, I want to pay you X to represent my brand. That's a big part of this whole mess that's coming down. Okay, so we have the revenue sharing. Now, certain schools can really augment their $20.5 million by a lot. Example, University of Texas. It reported in the Houston Chronicle that at University of Texas, they have about $40 to $50 million that they're projecting is going to be paying into their roster this year. 40 to 50 million for college athletes, for players who are only a few years removed from high school that aren't in the pros. These are supposed to be non-professionals, okay? 40 to 50 million. Now, I don't know how you can determine the value of an athlete when they haven't proven anything yet. I mean, we're paying for potential, not based on performance. And there's been a lot of suggestions where you can't, I think it was Saban recently that said, how can you pay that wasn't Saban, it was another coach, and I don't have it with me, but I read that he said, how do you pay a freshman more than a senior? Well, that's the issue. I mean, everything should be based on performance. This is how it should be. How well you do, you have your academic money, which is different. That's an academic aid agreement. But then you have your name, image, and likeness money and revenue sharing. That's based on predominantly athletics, okay? So how do you pay an athlete based on what they haven't even done yet? I mean, what you're doing in high school, it doesn't mean anything. I've said this before, and I'm going to keep repeating it for anybody who's new to the show. What you've done in high school really doesn't carry the weight you think it carries, and I'll explain to you why. With the transfer portal, it's getting harder and harder for high school athletes to be seen by colleges. The college coaches are going to load up their rosters with players on the portal, more established players. So you have to find a way to set yourself apart. Well, I wanted to do that is not to put that on a website, some recruiting website, and hope that they find you, because coaches don't go to recruiting websites as a rule. They just don't. They don't have to, especially the bigger schools. You need to get exposure. You need to make sure that you're seen by these coaches. Now, you can develop your own resume. Work on your strength, work on your playmaking, work on your academics, work on your discipline. That's great. But you can have the greatest product ever, and it's worthless if nobody sees it. That's where I come in. I run TitanScouting.com. Titan Scouting is athlete marketing service. I've been doing this for over 20 years. I make sure that athletes get exposure. Inexpensive and thorough. I work incredibly hard. I make sure that you guys get out to all the coaches, as many coaches as possible, to make sure that they know who you are. You get exposure, you get on their radar, and then they have you on their list. So when it comes to recruiting, they'll say, oh, I remember this kid, and they'll reach out to you if they're interested. That's what I do. I make sure they know who you are. It's very hard work, but I don't mind doing it because it helps athletes get a home. You contact me, TitanScouting.com, or go to Instagram, Titan Scouting, or Recruit Boss. One of those two, you can find me there. Message me, let me know what you want. We'll get you started. We'll customize your package for you. And then once you're locked in, we'll make sure that not only will I talk to coaches for you, but I will also guide you through the recruiting process and kind of be a go-between. I don't do negotiations. I'm not an agent. I'm just here to help you get exposure, get a deal, and get into college. That's what I want to do. Find you a home so you can play at the next level. Contact me, TitanScouting.com, and I'll help you know your goal. If you're a high school athlete and you're playing football, 7.1%, roughly 7.1%, kind of have to cut that in half with transfer portal, but let's just use the NCAA numbers, 7.1%. 7.1% of high school athletes will make it to college at some level. Of those three levels, Division 1, 4 levels, Division 1, Division 1AA, or FBS, FCS, Division 2, and Division 3, of those 4 levels, the ones making it to Division 1, which would be kind of the both FBS or FCS, is only about 3.5%. That's it. 3.5% of all high school athletes nationwide will make it to Division 1. Again, probably closer to 2% just because of transfer portal or less, but we'll stick with 3.5. So of the 3.5%, does that mean you are better than 96.5% of all other players in high school? Not really. It does, but it doesn't. It means that you're only better than 96.5% of the athletes who have no chance of making it to Division 1. And only 7.1%, 92.9% of all athletes who have no chance at all of playing in college. That's all it means. It doesn't mean you're that much more superior. It just means that you're better than the ones who can't do it. So if you look at it that way, you don't hold that much weight, okay? The only value that athletes are getting now from nil collective money and all this is, and through revenue sharing, is based off of potential, of what they think they can offer to a team, what coaches believe they could offer to a team. Michael Jordan was talking about that before in an interview with Oprah Winfrey, and Charles Barkley was with him. He said the problem is, and he saw it back in late 90s, mid 90s. He said that the problem is that they're paying athletes in the NBA now for potential. When he got to the NBA, they had to earn their money and then get paid for it. Now they're paying them sight unseen. I mean, here's an example. Look at Shedeur Sanders. I have a whole nother show coming up with a lot of lessons to be learned. I think should be the next episode. Lessons learned from Shedeur Sanders. Great lessons for high school athletes. Great lessons for any athlete, okay? Shedeur Sanders signed a contract, $4.5 million. That's his contract, $4.5 million in the NFL. Okay. 5th round pick, dropped 4 rounds, and they're saying he's worth $4.5 million. Is it less than he'd be making in college off nil? Probably. They say, I think they were projecting anywhere from $6 to $8 million for him in college. So he's making $4.5 million. Based off of what, though? Based off of what? What he did in college, based off of potential. But you have Cam Ward, who just inked the deal for like $48 million. It's like almost $49 million, like 48.5 or something like that. Cam Ward inks that deal as a number one pick in the draft based off of potential. So he hasn't accomplished a thing in the NFL yet. That's the NFL. We're talking college now. So we have high school. That's different. When you have a guy on the college stage and they're competing with other collegiate athletes, you're looking at a lot of people, most of whom won't make it to the pros, but there's a lot of people out there who will. And you can gauge that person based on how they perform on a bigger stage, a larger profile, wider visibility, national TV, and against some higher caliber talent. More specifically, you can watch them in certain situations against specific teams that are coached incredibly well, who run very intricate and aggressive defensive schemes. If that quarterback performs really well against them, then you can kind of deduce that. But in high school, you're not getting that. You're not. I've been filming high school sports for over 20 years. And I will say this, I have never had my doors blown off by a high school football player. I haven't. I've seen some very talented ones. They've come close. The only college athlete that's blown my doors off that I've seen in person was Riley Heck, field hockey player. Ridiculously above everybody else. If you're a Division I player, in high school, bona fide Division I, you should always be head and shoulders above everybody else. You should be dominating them every single second of the game. You're going to have your downs here and there, but on the overall, you should make those 92.9% of other kids look like 92.9%. Look like they can't compete with a Division I player. That was Riley Heck. I mean, the young lady scored 6 goals in a game in a row by herself. It was ridiculous. It was sick how good she was. She'd get that ball and she would just put everyone to shame. And you knew when she touched it, it was like Jordan getting the ball. Seriously, that's the truth. And if you're a Division I player, that's what you need to be. That's bona fide D1. That's not borderline. That's solid D1. Now we're talking realistic potential, but you're still doing it against high school athletes, most of whom will not make it to college. So now you're going to go into college and they're going to say, we're going to pay you $2 million. For what? Oh, I don't know. Because we think you're going to be good. Okay, so if they're not good, are you going to give that money? They're going to give that money back? No, they're going to pay them. Now they may not renew their deal. Okay, but they're going to ink a deal, and the deal is going to be for a year. And of course, these guys who like to bail out of their deals after they get their money, like the Shedeur Sanders' brother. Nick. I'm sorry, Nick. Not Shedeur Sanders. His name was Warren Ayamaleva. Okay, the brother of what's his name? Ayamaleva. Yeah, Nick Ayamaleva. Nick Ayamaleva. Thank you. I think it was Warren Ayamaleva, who was the brother of Nick, and he was at Arkansas for 4 months, and he got his deal, and then he bailed out and ended up joining his brother, and he was being sued. I got to look into that and see how that came out. But you have to honor a deal, and you're going to say, here's your millions of dollars. So if you get your $1 or $2 million as a freshman based off of potential, you got to prove it. You have to earn that money afterward. And they can always not renew your deal, but you have the money already. You're not giving it back. So that's the problem. So they're paying these kids the money. It's done. It's done. The money is coming in, and there's no real way to stop it. All they're trying to do is slow the leaking and try to maintain some semblance of control. The NCAA is. And they're not going to do a good job of it. Okay, let's go on with some more of the settlement information. A little thing, not really related. I could talk about this separately, but a $2.8 billion payment will be distributed to athletes who competed between 2016 and 2024. They were unable to earn nil payments and receive cash academic awards. This payment will be made over 10 years, with the NCAA contributing 60% and the schools contributing 40%. So now they're going to pay kids who played in college who didn't earn money because that wasn't the policy then? There's a lot of things that are like that in the world, that someone got to, like NFL players who used to play for $50,000 in a season. Are they getting back pay from the NFL? No. They got themselves killed on the football field. It was vicious. But they would work in used car dealerships, or they work in bars in the off season, or they have other jobs because the NFL only paid them, $30,000, $50,000. Okay? So they had to survive. And they were just lucky to have the job back then. Guys like Jim Brown and other players, old school players. So are they paying them that back money? And the answer is no. But now we're going to say to these college players, well, because we have a bunch of spoiled kids now, okay? The I need to get something, the participation trophy generation, who a lot of people raised, the participation trophy generation are used to getting something for nothing. They're saying, we're going to give you money out of $2.8 billion. You're going to get some of the money paid out to you because we feel bad and somebody sued us. That's ridiculous. That's ridiculous. I played football, Division I ball, back in the 90s, okay? Did all my players that played, should they get money too? No. Then why does it go back to 2016? It doesn't make any sense. It's just ridiculous, especially when name, image, and likeness wasn't a thing until about 2018. So why are they paying back in 2016? Doesn't make sense. So that's just silly legal BS that I don't agree with. So we have the revenue sharing. We have the $2.8 billion back pay. They have information about roster limits, which is still up in the air. I had a softball athlete who were marketing and Division I school contacted me and said, "We're on hold. We're on hold until we know what the payout, the settlement is, because we don't know what our roster limits are going to be. So we have to put a freeze on our recruiting." And that's the problem. That's what you're coming down with. You're hurting these people with these athletes who are trying to go in there because you're freezing the schools on the roster limits. And that's a big battle. I'm not even going to go into that. New benefits for student athletes. We're not going to touch it. And eligibility requirements. Okay. So now we're going to get to the meat of what we're talking about here. All right. The new rules that are being put in place by the NCAA that don't really apply to the Power 4 schools. It's a different set of rules, okay? Haves versus the have-nots. Let me touch on this here. Our article from Front Office Sports, it says, will the House versus NCAA settlement actually end pay-for-play nil deals? Short answer, no. No. But let's continue. Memo obtained by the company, by Front Office Sports. They have memo from the NCAA, 3-page memo, distributed to the schools by officials involved in the settlement, obtained by this Front Office Sports, sheds new lights on the clearinghouse, which is going to be called Nil Go. Nil, the word go. HBO Go. I don't know. Is it a streaming service? Nil Go. Nil Go. Some of the biggest revelations. Here we go. The clearinghouse itself wouldn't be able to block certain. So there's a clearinghouse. Here it is. They're creating a clearinghouse. This is the most confusing part of it. So the NCAA and power conferences have released a few details about a clearinghouse that's run through a software. I hope I'm pronouncing this right. Deloitte, D-E-L-O-I-T-T-E, Deloitte, I guess. And it's a new software, all right? The new software is supposed to track the deals, okay? This is already sounding bad, but let's continue. So it says the clearinghouse, Nil Go, wouldn't be able to block certain deals. Here's what it won't do. It won't be able to block certain deals. Instead, it will just flag them. So a deal comes through on this software, and the software puts up a flag and says, wait a second, that may not be a legit deal. Okay. Schools will be in charge of determining the difference between a booster and collective versus a non-affiliated brand. So it's up to the schools to determine this. Do you see a problem with that? The schools will say, well, it's not really a collective. It could be a booster, but it could be a non-affiliated deal. The non-affiliated deals, that is pretty easy to figure out. If it's money coming in from Marathon or from Nike or from Gatorade and they're paying it, then that's a little easy to figure out. But no collective versus booster money, kind of the same thing. So it's very hard to separate the two and distinguish between them, especially if you don't want to. And these schools don't want to do that. But I digress. Let's continue on because this is not good. The software, I'm going to pronounce it anymore. The software will potentially charge hefty fines, anywhere between $5,000 to $500,000 per school. Okay, if it flags specific deals, if they're not legal deals. Potentially. Okay, but plenty of questions remain. Yes, I have questions. But is it legal for the NCAA and the conferences to determine fair market value? Now we're at that again. Can the NCAA and the schools determine the value of an athlete? That'll bring you to the Sherman Antitrust Act, which is the litmus for every single solitary lawsuit that's out there. They're suing all the time based off of the Sherman Antitrust Act. There's a player, and I'll do a show about that when it comes to eligibility, a player from Tennessee basketball who's suing. He wants a fifth year of eligibility, and his lawyers, of course, say it's a violation of the Sherman Antitrust Act, which was established back in like the 1800s and doesn't really apply. However, in the ruling in 2021, there was a Supreme Court ruling that said, yeah, you got to pay these kids. And there you have it. Now there's called precedent. In law, there's this thing called precedent. If a lawsuit was filed in the past and the case adjudicated and then the verdict rendered, that verdict is now precedent going forward. So as long as your case comes close to applying to that, it's precedent. So your lawyers will say, well, in X versus NCAA in 2021, that was established, and this is the same thing. And then the courts will go, yeah, well, I guess you're right. Okay, fine, pay him. Once that's established, it's very hard to get out of that one. So it's a hot mess. But let's continue. So it's going to determine which penalties athletes will face if they refuse. Oh, this is fun. What penalties athletes, these are questions that are not determined yet, right? What penalties athletes will face if they refuse to participate in the process or go forward with deals regardless. How do you refuse to participate? So why is there even the opportunity to refuse to participate? This is what I'm talking about. There's no solidified deal across, like no contractual obligation across the board. It's, here's the thing, we're going to determine whether it's going to be, and the schools will determine whether it's going to be a no clearinghouse or a booster, and the schools will, or a fair or a third party, donor, third party affiliate, but the software may determine it to be an invalid deal, which was weird. If the school is supposed to approve it, then how does the software determine it? And can it be ignored? Apparently so, because an athlete can then can say, we refuse to participate. Well, let's talk at University of West Virginia. Let me pull that up. Hold on. University of West Virginia. Here we go. University of West Virginia. Trust me, it gets worse. Article here from the Nil Daily. Oh, no, SI.com. It's their Nil Daily. SI.com. SI, Sports Illustrated. West Virginia advances bold nil legislation that could trigger NCAA conflict. West Virginia, it says here, the legislators have introduced two bills in Virginia, HB 2576 and HB 2595. Which aims to redefine how student athletes at schools for programs like the West Virginia Mountaineers and Marshall are compensated for their name, image, and likeness. The legislation, backed by prominent delegates and supported by school officials and football coach Rich Rodriguez, empowers state universities to manage and directly facilitate nil and revenue-sharing payments through new nonprofit corporations. Entities controlled by the schools and shielded from NCAA interference. Already, you got people jumping ship. Already. And you got the thing. Your politicians are getting involved. Like my previous episode about the ACSA that some politicians are trying to implement, which I'm going to do a follow-up on. You have politicians now saying, "Hey, we're gonna beat them to the punch. We're going to create legislation," which is how it started in California, and we're going to say this is how it applies to West Virginia schools or Virginia schools. Okay. It says here, blah, blah, blah. That autonomy, however, may come at a steep cost. The proposed House versus NCAA, which we're talking about now, settlement, antitrust settlement, awarding final approval, establishes a nationwide nil framework that includes a $20.5 million revenue sharing cap and independent clearinghouse to vet third-party nil deals, independent clearinghouse software. But we continue. So those bills would prohibit any athletic association from punishing athletes or schools for violating the national rules. So your state rules are going to supersede the national rules. So going back to what we were just talking about, you have penalties that athletes will face if they refuse to participate in the process or go forward with deals regardless. So what's going to happen? No, what could happen is they could kick West Virginia and Marshall out of the NCAA or out of bowl contention and say you can't participate in any bowls. That could be their punishment. But you know and I know they're just going to sue and say, Sherman Antitrust Act, you can't do that because that creates a monopoly, and that's a big part of the Sherman Antitrust Act is monopolies. And if you're saying we can't run our business, which is our school, the way we want to run our school, then you're creating a monopoly against our business. And to add to that, University of Kentucky recently created a company. This is why I have that. They created a company, an LLC, I believe. Here it is, University of Kentucky. Oh, Lord in heaven, I'm telling you. This is dated April 24th, okay? From University of Kentucky's website. Here we go. UK now, with a change to continue to be one of the country's top programs, University of Kentucky Athletics may soon reside in a holding company. This new model, perhaps the first of its kind in the country among major programs, is designed to increase flexibility and enable the department to continue as one of the best in the country by finding new opportunities to generate additional revenue and more efficiently manage expenses. So there you have a school saying, yeah, we're going to do it ourselves because we're tired of waiting on the NCAA and all this other BS. So the new model says here, discussing here it is, the entire UK athletics department would be shifted to a limited liability or holding company being created called Champions Blue LLC. The UK Athletics Committee is discussing the proposed opportunity this afternoon. I don't know how, I got to do a follow-up on that one and find out because that was back in April. The strategy will provide the department with the flexibility to unlock new revenue streams through private partnerships and potentially other transactions such as real estate. The holding company structure is similar to how University of Kentucky in recent years has acquired two major community hospitals. Both hospital systems are similarly structured, holding companies that ultimately report to the university and its board of trustees. So UK is trying to create their own company. That's the argument. I know it's going to be the freaking argument. If West Virginia and Marshall, if that legislation's passed in Virginia, and they say, we're going to do it our own way, this is how we're paying our athletes, and you can't tell us different, and the NCAA says, well, then you can't compete in the bowl games, the same could apply for Kentucky, in which case they'll sue the NCAA and say, Sherman Antitrust Act, monopoly, preventing us from making a living and earning revenue based on your restrictions. Then you're going to have to say, well, NCAA is screwed. The NCAA is so screwed right now. Some people say, oh, that's great that they're screwed. I'm just saying they're stupid. They created this themselves. The NCAA created this through their hubris and their arrogance. They made this happen. We heard talk of athletes need to get paid earlier than 2018, right? Before they even passed no legislation in the first place. Okay, we heard this. We knew it was coming, but because they couldn't see past the nose in front of their face, they couldn't see past their elite colored glasses and saying, we're the illustrious NCAA. No, you are going to get the end around from people because they're wanting to do something that you're unwilling to do. NCAA could have nipped this in the bud earlier, but now we're trying to piecemeal it together. So let's get back to the topic. Okay. So we got a lot to unpack here. So penalties of athletes, we discussed that. And it continues on. Several industry, and it continues to add to the penalties. What penalties athletes will face if they refuse to participate in the process, or whether the rules are enforceable. That's another question. Are they even enforceable? That's the point. Enforce a rule against an athlete, they sue, and we've seen the NCAA folds. They folded when it came time to transfer portal back in 2020, back last year, 2023. Or 2024, I'm sorry, athletes sued. It was prior to that, but they sued. I think it was 2021 they sued, or 2023. They sued, but 2024 it opened the floodgates because of they filed an injunction against the NCAA, and then they said, okay, everybody can transfer as many times as they want, and here we are in chaos land. All right, blah, 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 blah. Continue on. Several industry experts say that they see a myriad of issues with the plan, including those that could be fodder for more lawsuits. I just said that. The confusion comes just a week before the settlement could receive final approval. So in the new process, it says here, if approved, the terms including the requirement for all nil deals to run through the clearinghouse will begin July 1st. Okay. In the new process, athletes would submit the deal information to their athletic department, which would have to determine the status, quote unquote, of the entity paying them, whether they're boosters or collectives. Again, the school has to say, is it a booster or is it a collective? They're the same thing. They're basically the same thing. Booster is direct money to the athlete. Clearinghouse is money from a booster to the clearinghouse to the athlete. Kind of the same thing. The criteria suggested includes not just whether the payor, the person paying, was created to support an athletic department like a collective or has contributed more than $50,000 to the school like a booster. So that's their litmus test, $50,000. If they've contributed, more than $50,000 to put toward the school, that's a booster. But if it's an organization that's collective, well, guess what's going to happen? Your boosters are just going to give the money to the collective. That's all they're going to do. If they know that you can't pay the athletes and it's going to be flagged as something, they're going to just give it to the collective because the collective is the one that's approvable for the most part. It would also be a company with employment or ownership roles tied to the institution or associated entities. Schools will each appoint an employee. This is fun. Schools will each appoint an employee dubbed a change champion. Change champion. They have more time coming up with these stupid names than they do actually implementing policy to facilitate and oversee this process at the campus level. So there's your mediator. Okay, that's basically what it is. They're putting together the change champion. It's just a player representative, a mediator, a contract negotiator. That's all it is. A recent draft from the settlement suggested that only deals considered to be from boosters or collectives or companies that could be theoretically considered boosters would go through this analysis. A deal in this category would run through the software system to determine whether it offers a fair market value payment to a player for nil activities like an endorsement, autograph signing, or whether it's pay for play disguised as nil. How in the hell is the software to determine that? That's the question. You're going to have a software that's going to determine whether it's a fair market value. Based on what? Well, let's see if it tells us. There it is. Well, I'm glad I asked the question. One of the biggest and logistical questions has been how it will be determined. Thank you. According to the memo, The software will use a 12-point analysis comparing the deal with similarly situated deals. Okay, parity, I guess, looking at social media presence, local institutional market size, and brand influence. So it's using social media presence. And how impactful you are to society based off what? High school? College? What if you have no social media presence? So you're not paid much? I guess that's how it's going to be. And then that's going to get sued because it's not fair because of my potential. Okay. Even though the deals aren't supposed to be pay for play, the criteria will include on-field performance and roster value. All right, hold on. I fully agree with on-field performance being and roster value being a determining factor in terms of what an athlete is paid, since they're going to be paid anyway, okay? I agree with that. But that kind of is pay for play. The better you perform, the better you're paid. But also it goes with you're paid for performance, for potential, not for performance. This one's letting you get paid for performance, but they're also looking at potential, social media presence, local institutional market size, and brand influence. What they think your value is going to be based off what your social media looks like now. Okay, I'll give it a shot. I'm going to be negative all the way, but I don't think this is going to work out very well, because once they go to an athlete and say, you're not going to be paid X, then the athlete's going to say, well, I'm going to sue you. And then the athlete might opt out, and then they're going to say, we're going to penalize you for opting out and refusing to follow the rules. And then the athlete's going to sue and say, Sherman Antitrust Act. And they're going to have to pay him. If the deal is not cleared, players have several options. They can cancel the deal, renegotiate for less money, and resubmit to the clearinghouse and request neutral arbitration, or proceed at risk of eligibility consequences. Okay, so you have four options, or opt out, which we just discussed. The memo did not name who would run the arbitration, nor did it outline specific consequences athletes would face if they went forward with the deals, because they don't have this figured out yet. Bottom line. The software will not oversee the enforcement process. However, that's up to the enforcement entity to be created by the NCAA and the power conferences. So the power conferences and the NCAA will have create an entity that will enforce these rules, right? Okay, bear with me. I'm just skimming this over. I outline processes, raise a long list of questions, blah, blah, blah. And these are all questions that we've asked. Okay. So, but this nil attorney says, the framework is a major legal issue. Determining fair market value for nil deals is subjective, and could lead to disputes between athletes, businesses, and the clearinghouse. Told you. A lawyer's already gearing up to sue because the software determines the fair market value, and he says, no, my athlete's worth more than that. That's going to be a big friggin' mess. Guys, just create a contract. Just set a salary cap. Pay the athletes X, Y, and Z. Use the NFL minimum as if the player minimum in the NFL is $330,000. Let's say, or I think it's like $1 million is your player minimum, right? I think that's it. That's what it is now. If it's $1 million in the NFL and you're not at the NFL, then anything outside of the NFL needs to be below that minimum. That's the only way to do it fairly. College kids do not need to make $2 to $4 million because now you're a professional athlete. If you're making some-odd million, and what you have now are guys who are trying to get another year of eligibility, okay, so they can make some nil money because they know they're not going to go in the pros, right? There's a guy from Vanderbilt. I forget his name off the top of my head. I mentioned him in the last show. He sued Vanderbilt because he was at JUCO for 2 years. Let's see if I can find his name because it's going to bug me that I don't know his name. 1 second. His name is, do I have it here? Let me find him. Pavia. There it is. Diego Pavia. Pavia sued the NCAA because he wanted his JUCO years to not count against his eligibility. And he wanted another year of eligibility now that nil is a thing, and he wanted to make his money. Because the guy's 6 foot tall. He's not going to play in the NFL. It ain't going to happen. So he knows I got to get my money while the getting's good. I don't blame him for trying to get money. But there's no way a player should make more money than your minimum level or average level NFL player. I mean, practice squad players in the NFL get like, what, 50, 60 grand? Something like that. They make some kind of money. But your minimum player gets like $1 million. That's like your average cost across the board. So if that's the case, it's not quite that, but that's like the average. So the players should make less than that. That's just how it needs to be. But the NCAAs, they're just getting this more. It gets more and more complex the more they do this. I kind of starting to agree with the congressman from my last show. The NCAA needs to be scrapped and then restructured from the bottom up with a whole new structure, basically turning it into a semi-pro league. Or you maintain the NCAA the way it is currently for everybody else but the Power 4 schools, all right? Power 4 conferences. Well, now that I've segued nicely into that, let's discuss. You find it. Where is it? Is it here? Give me a second. Here we go. Let's take a look at this piece here. CEO to oversee. This is from, what is this from? I don't even know who this is from. Oh, CBS Sports. CEO to oversee college sports rules enforcement after the House versus NCAA settlement is finalized, per report. So, ruling is finally expected soon. New enforcement organization and CEO to oversee college athletics, according to ESPN's Pete Tamel. The NCAA will continue to enforce a number of terms, including eligibility rules, sports betting, academic requirements, and others, while a new entity called the College Sports Commission, we're getting there, the College Sports Commission, the CSC. So we have the what was that, the change something guy? They have, what was that one guy called? The change agent or whatever the hell his name was. Now we have the CEC, all right? Or CSC, the College Sports Commission, will oversee the new revenue sharing cap and no clearinghouse. Tamel reports the CEO of said commission could be announced quickly after the House settlement goes final. Hiring responsibilities lie with the Power 4 commissioners. The Power 4 hire the CSC. We're getting there. Who are already deep in the process of tabbing the first CEO. The person tasked with leading the College Sports Commission will immediately step into one of the most prominent roles in college athletics at a time which countless figures across the sport beg for guidance with regards to nil, blah, 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 revenue sharing. According to Tamel, the expectation is the CEO will likely hail from outside college athletics universe and is not expected to be a household name to college sports fans. The CEO will earn a 7-figure salary. No kidding. When the College Sports Commission takes power following the conclusion of the House settlement, its CEO will report to a board that includes the Power 4 commissioners. Okay. The executive will oversee newly implemented systems, including the $20 million revenue sharing salary cap and the clearinghouse for nil deals. Okay. See how confusing this is? So the College Sports Commissioner, I guess it would be, they call it the College Sports Commission. It's part of a whole organization, but there's the one overseeing guy and then the representatives for each of the Power 4 conferences? Conferences? What did I say? Conferences or schools? And for Power 4 commissioners. And Power 4 commissioners. So they have Power 4 commissioners. So I guess one per conference. I don't even know how it's going to work out. All right. Now I've said all that, right? We have all those rules and we have this other rule here. I told you, your head's going to explode by the time this is done. They don't even know what the hell they're doing. But let's continue. Now we go with the fun article. Love this article. Saw this yesterday, May 20th. Charlie Baker, head of the NCAA, right? The guy that's going to come in and fix everything. Headline, Power Conferences will enforce House settlement not the NCAA. The Power 4 conferences are going to enforce the settlement. The NCAA has nothing to do with it now. So the Power 4 conferences are... Let's read. The Power 4 conferences, not the NCAA, will be in charge of enforcing the rules created by the House versus NCAA settlement over athlete compensation. Charlie Baker, NCAA President, confirmed Tuesday the rules to be governed by Power conferences include the revenue sharing cap and scrutiny of nil collective deals. Blah, blah, blah. The House settlement is awaiting a final decision by Northern District of California Judge Claudia Wilkin, who's taking forever. I wonder if she's getting paid by the hour for this because, boo boy, she's milking it. Who could issue a ruling as early as this week? Yeah. The settlement, a consolidation of 3 major antitrust cases, offers $2.8 billion in back damages. Yeah, we said we had already nil money before 2022. Allows D1 schools to share revenue with players up to an annual cap starting at $20.5 million, but also implements a clearinghouse to scrutinize nil collectives and booster deals. We covered all that. The College Sports Commission. The point behind this, here is a quote from Baker, quote, the point behind this was to have an entity that would see the cap management system and the third-party nil system, have rules associated with both, create enforcement parameters for violating those rules under the rubric that would be the theoretical injunction. Whoa, bro. The College Sports Commission, created and overseen by the 4 power conferences and not the NCAA, will make sure all Division I schools are abiding by the cap on revenue sharing. It will also own NilGo, the clearinghouse software created by, that's clearinghouse software. It's called NilGo. So this article has more information. Created by that company Deloitte, or whatever it's called, that will use data to scrutinize whether a nil deal offered by a collective or booster is offering fair market value, or whether the deal is actually pay for play disguised as nil. The adjudication process will also allow players to appeal these decisions through neutral arbitration. All the stuff we've covered, more consolidated on this one. Okay. It's unclear what punishments will be handed down to athletes, schools, and third parties if they violate salary cap rules or offer pay-for-play nil deals. The CEO of the College Sports Commission, who has yet to be named, will have final say. Okay. So, College Sports Commission is controlled by the Power 4 schools. The Power 4 schools don't have to abide by NCAA regulations based off of pay-for-play and nil deals and nil collectives, right? They have their own CSC commissioners who then report to the CEO of the College Sports Commission. That's putting the lunatics in charge of the asylum. Do you really think for a second that the Power 4 schools who just want to spend millions of dollars on athletes, like Texas, who wants to spend 40 to 50 million, do you really think that they're going to abide by the rules? Some set of guidelines? No, they're going to make their own rules up as they go, man. That's what they're going to do. They're going to bend the rules and change them. Trust me on this. It's not going to, there's no way they're going to hold each other strictly accountable. It's going to be kind of like, I'll tell you what, here's what's going to happen. My prediction. I would love to think they're going to be ethical and do the right thing, but come on, all evidence to the contrary. Here's what's going to happen. I want my kids to make X. This is what I want to do. Okay, well, yeah, but that's a deal that's not really going to be approved by the system. Look, let's smooth out the deal. Let's change the terms of it. And then what we'll do is we'll take the results, since we own NilGo anyway, the software. Since we own it anyway, we can just ignore the software. And then I'll do this for my athlete. Now let me do this for my athletes now. And then in the future, we'll remember you and you can do it for your athletes in the future. Oh, okay. That sounds like a good job. That sounds fine. I like that deal. That's what's going to happen. Then they all get together and then they go to the CEO and they'll say, hey man, this is what we're doing. We've come to agreement. We agree on this. What do you think? And he'll say, well, I don't know. And then they'll pressure him and he'll say, yeah, okay. All right. Why not? And he could say no, but I don't think it's going to carry a lot of weight when they own the software. But okay. Industry experts have told this front office sports players, schools, and third-party nil entities could challenge the clearinghouse and revenue sharing cap in court on antitrust grounds. Told you, and they will. Those are challenges that have historically been faced by the NCAA. No kidding. So, what's going to happen from there? Here's my long-term prediction. All right, right now it's a big mess. All right, but we have the basics. Basics in summary. You have a $20.5 million cap, which can be augmented by no clearinghouse, booster money, third-party affiliate money, mainly nil clearinghouse booster money. Okay, which is kind of all in the same. I kind of lump them all together, but let's just separate them because that's what the terms say. So you have that. $20.5 million augmented by nil clearinghouse booster money. You also have a software, nil go, that the money has to go, all deals have to go through when submitted by an athlete. So agent negotiates deal for athlete, nil agent negotiates deal, goes to the Power 4 schools and says, here's my deal. The College Sports Commission takes the deal, submits it into the no-go software, which they own. That looks at the deal and says, it's either pay for play or not pay for play. The software cannot levy any penalties against the athletes, all right, for a deal. It can just flag a deal. So if it flags a deal, then they just basically can go back and say, rework the deal. And now I know that a lot of the teams don't like to pay these athletes a lot of money. They're tired of that. So they actually may police themselves. We can only hope. They may say, look, we want to cap it at X. But what's going to happen is they're going to get sued. Under the Sherman Antitrust Act, they're going to get sued. And they say that's not fair market value because the software to determine based off of social media presence, other factors, influence, and then on-field play and value to the team, that'll determine the value of the athlete based off of fair market value. In which case, the lawyers, the nil attorney for the athlete will sue and say, wrong, I don't agree. It's supposed to go to a mediator to renegotiate that. But let's be real, there's going to be a lawsuit. That's what's going to happen. They're going to sue and they're going to want more, and it's going to get out of control. I think what's going to end up happening with this is your Power 4 schools, because there's the NCAA rules, and then there's the Power 4 schools rules. Okay, almost all of these deals, all these terms in the settlement apply to the Power 4 conferences, right? Again, Power 4, ACC, SEC, Big 10, Big 12. What's going to happen is, I think that the Power 4 schools in the future, maybe 10 years, maybe less than that, they're going to break off. It's going to be a separate entity. It's going to evolve into a separate entity. It may as well be now, if it doesn't have to abide by the NCAA rules, it's going to become a separate entity, and it's going to set up its own structure as a semi-pro league. And really, that's what they should do. If we're already here and we're going in that direction, the NCAA should say, look, mid-majors and down, Division 2s, Division 3s, that's NCAA. We have that championship, the FCS championship, or your mid-majors, kind of a different championship. Division 1s get rolled into one thing, maybe. All your Power 4s are separate. Or you can have a Division 1 and an FCS championship and a 2 and a 3, and then your Power 4s, they are indirectly affiliated with the NCAA, but they're actually their own organization that competes for the TV money, the revenue, the exposure, and then you have a whole different structure. They can manage themselves and buy. And this maybe I like to give him credit for maybe he's smarter than I'm thinking. But Baker saying, yeah, you can. They're not held accountable. What was his term? The power conferences. What was it? NCAA will not be in charge of enforcing the rules of the Power 4 conferences. So if the NCAA is already not in charge of enforcing the rules, then the Power 4 conferences are their own league, their own organization. So they shouldn't even fall under NCAA. And to be honest, if that's the case, then your athletes should pay these guys who are making millions of dollars, hundreds of thousands of dollars in nil money. If they're getting $20.5 million that they can dole out to these athletes, guess what? They should pay for their tuition. They should. If you're already making this money, you shouldn't have tuition paid too. It's just not fair for you to be making $2 million in a year and then still be given another $2 million as $50,000 a year for 4 years, another $2 million or $200,000 for 4 years. It's not fair. You should pay your own tuition if they do that. I mean, if you're not going to fall under the NCAA rules, that should be a tenet of this. And if it's not, then it's kind of ridiculous. Let's be real. But that's where we stand. It's a hot mess. I kind of summed it up as best I could. There's going to be a lot of issues going forward, and I'm sure I'll have a lot of content to report on this, which I'm looking forward to, kind of. But that's where it's going. Is it going to hurt? I don't know what the roster limit's going to be yet. Is it still going to hurt high school athletes? That's my game, high school athletes, and getting them into college. Yeah, oh yeah. It's going to hurt the high school athletes because again, you're going to have your transfer portal is going to be your gem right now. Your Division I players who enter the portal who aren't picked up off the portal, they give up their scholarship already, and then they have to get a deal. And maybe 25 to 30% of them who enter the portal actually get picked up off the portal. So you have 70 to 75% who won't. And 1AAs, 2s, 3s, they'll feast on that. And that hurts athletes down the road. I'm already seeing it with recruiting. I'm seeing athletes losing deals. I'm seeing schools saying our roster's filled. We have 1 or 2 spots already. Well, they're not filled at Division III schools. They're not filled because they've recruited that many. They're filled partially because they plucked kids off of the portal who weren't going to make it anywhere else, and they decided to sweeten the pot with some, scholarship money, academic scholarship money or whatever. That's where we're going. So I'm curious, what do you think about it? I think that's where it's going. Do you agree that that's where it's going, that the Power 4 should be a total separate league? I wonder how the structure would be. I'm curious about that. But that's it. I hope it made some sense. Until next time, I'm Matt Roberts with ProZone. Thank you for listening. Know your goal. Hey guys, thank you for watching the ProZone. Make sure you check back for more episodes. And if you haven't done so already, like, share, subscribe, and ring the notification bell so you don't miss what we have coming up next.